Rory, could you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your role and responsibilities as the CEO of MPLC?
So I'm the CEO of a company called MPLC, and what we do is we partner with some of the world's most famous entertainment brands to help to ensure that companies can use that entertainment content in their businesses all around the world, and to make sure that the people that create the content get paid when those shows and films are being shown in public places. So we're an international business. It's growing. It's been growing very quickly over the last few years. I think it's an amazing company, and it brings lots of excitement and energy and joy and plenty of challenges too.
Thank you. What were the main challenges or areas you were struggling with before you started working with me a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so if I think back, this is my first time in a CEO role. I've done senior roles in fast-growing international companies before, but it's the first time being the ultimate person in charge of the business. And so while it was a huge moment, like fulfilling a career ambition, it also brought a new level of pressure and stress, which I had to handle and cope with. And also, I would say that you often hear people say it's lonely at the top, and there is a sense when you're leading a business or a team, you can sometimes feel, I wouldn't necessarily say lonely, but you definitely feel like you're on your own or kind of can be isolated sometimes. And I've got very good mentors and a network of people around me who are able to support me and give me advice and guidance. But I also realized, and a lot of them talked to me early on, that you need to, as part of being a great CEO, if you want to be a great CEO, you need to have kind of self-care plan or some sort of strategy to look after yourself. Because if you can't keep yourself in good condition, you can't lead a team and a business to be really successful. And so I think the challenges, if I look back on it, that I was handling were just adapting to a new level of pressure and expectation from external parties, but also myself. And I felt very kind of under pressure to deliver on behalf of the company and my team. So it was a lot of pressure I was dealing with, and it was the first time doing it. So you have all the normal imposter syndrome, self-doubt, lack of self-confidence that I think most people experience at some point or another.
And how did you learn about me, and what made you ultimately decide to work with me? What were your intentions for the coaching back then when we started?
So you were introduced to me through a mutual friend, someone in my network, and we spoke, and I felt an immediate sense of trust and confidence when we spoke. Like I completely trusted you, that I could speak to you confidentially and about whatever's going on without that getting shared. Also, I just had a really nice feeling when we first spoke that I trusted you and I was excited to work with you and explore stuff. I didn't I think in some ways I've worked with coaches in the past. Although the work you and I have done together has probably gone broader and deeper than I have done with other coaches, where they've been much more specifically business focused rather than on kind of self-care and looking after yourself personally. But I kind of had an inkling of how that was going to work, but I was really excited, and just you kind of whet my appetite to understand what that journey was going to be like and how it's going to work.
Cool. Next, we're going to talk about your experience during the first 6 months of our work together. If you think back in our earliest sessions, was there a moment where you felt certain that you had made the right choice to work with me? And what was that in your experience? What made you feel that way?
Ooh. It's casting my mind back quite a long time. But I think that if I think back to the early stages of us working together, I felt like we were really exploring some quite deep. We were questioning, why am I lacking self-confidence, or why am I doubting myself and what I'm doing, or why am I worrying about what someone else might think of me, as opposed to just getting on with what I know is the right thing to do. And so we were kind of, peeling back the layers of these different feelings and exploring them and going into some quite interesting. You're very good at taking visualizations or doing kind of breathing exercises and reflecting on why you feel the way you do or what's causing that. And that was a really interesting journey, which I found it could be quite emotional, but it was actually really interesting because it helped get away from thinking about a business challenge or a work challenge in a work context, and more about how can I be how can, not a different person, but how can I acknowledge how I'm feeling and understand it better so that I can process it better and therefore go back to work and be much more effective in my role. And I
Mhm.
could, you know, I don't think there's like a moment when suddenly you go from it being bad to good or black to white or anything else. It's a gradual process. But I could feel that process. It was partly a release as I was dealing with that initial stress in that kind of early phase of the role. So it was almost like a release valve speaking to you, but also I could feel it gradually improving my resilience and tolerance for stress and pressure, enabling me to handle what was going on better. And I could just feel that happening over that initial period of working together.
Mhm. Next question would be, after our first 6 months of working together, you decided to renew your sessions and work with me for more time. What were some of the results you noticed after these first 6 months, and what made you decide to keep going?
So I think at the end of the first 6 months, again, if I cast my mind back, because I don't think this is sort of, I don't think it's a binary. It's not like you have a problem and it's fixed. Because as a human being, you're kind of organic as you're growing, developing. The challenges and the work you're facing are growing, developing, and evolving around you. So it's not like there's a problem, you've taught me a method, and it's therefore fixed, and you move on. It always felt like a journey to me.
Mhm.
And I think after that first 6 months, I felt like we'd established a sort of a foundation or a beginnings of a base or a baseline. But then it was very clear to me that that didn't mean. I think I felt like I had more to go, more room to grow, and more resilience to build, and more ways to get more effective at dealing with the pressure and stress I was dealing with at work. And I'd have to go back and check the dates, but I mean, there was definitively a lot of pressure and stuff happening at work as well. So I felt that having our regular sessions was a really good coping mechanism for me, or support for me to carry on being the best I could be at my job while working through that. So it just didn't feel like a natural time to stop, and I was convinced there was more value that could come from future sessions.
Mhm. Next, yeah, we can talk about your overall process, the results, and the transformation within those 2 years that we
Yeah.
ended up working together. My first question is, what specific tools or practices, if there were any, did you find most beneficial in terms of your professional and personal growth, and why?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Um, some of the kind of exercises you and I would do in sessions together, like I talked about, some of the visualizations you would do, or some of the breathing exercises, I've tried doing them on my own and they were quite hard to replicate. They just didn't work in the same way. They worked when we were in a session together, but harder for me to replicate. But some of them worked, like just doing some breathing exercises, and also just remembering some of the stuff that we had talked about in our sessions. There's one that you and I have said loads of times, that idea that you don't need to be exhausted to have done a good day's work.
Mhm.
And there's a few other little techniques and practices you taught me, which I would sometimes replicate, in the evening before you go to bed or when you wake up first thing in the morning. And I just found those really, really effective and calming. And there's sort of things I could call on, when work gets particularly stressful, or if there's something really challenging and you can feel it starting to weigh on you, I could kind of anchor back to those techniques and methods you taught me. Also, I think the process of working together over a period of time just helped to reframe some of the ways I thought about challenges or dealt with problems and issues, so that while it was less about going to a specific technique, it was more that work over a period of time. I think it's almost like training, right? If you go to the gym over a period of time, you will just generate more muscle mass. You'll be generally have a higher level of fitness to deal with, or if your body's just generally fitter. And I think about the work we did together was similar. Over a period of time, you just build up a general more strength, more self-understanding, more self-awareness, more resilience to be able to handle issues that come at you.
Mhm. Thank you. After 2 years of working together, who are you now compared to Rory from 2 years ago? What has changed?
So I think I'm more comfortable in myself, and I'm more self-aware. of what I'm good at and weak at, or not weak at, what I'm good at and where I need to work harder, where I've got opportunities to do better at stuff. I think also naturally I've been doing this role for longer, so I'm more comfortable in the role just by virtue of having more experience, having done it for a period of time. None of which to say that kind of life is all perfect or nothing gets stressful or you don't have bad days. That's all true. I think it's more being better able to cope with them and come through them effectively in a way that allows me to be the best leader I can for the company, to be the best leader I can for my team, but also be the best person I can be for myself so that I can kind of do it for the long haul. So I'm hopefully I think I'm able to do my job to a higher standard more consistently under more pressure when it comes with less overall cost to myself. Still hard sometimes. Things go wrong and things are challenging, but it's just raised the bar and across the board, I think.
You definitely have. Yeah. Overall, what tangible results did you experience or notice both in your business and in your personal life as a result of working together? And how has this work benefited your overall well-being, work-life balance, and ability to lead as a CEO?
Yeah, I think some of that was maybe covered in the last answer, but I feel that generally the business, I'm very, very proud of the performance of the company. It's done well and it continues to do well, and we believe it's got a really great future ahead of it. That's down to a whole lot of work by 150 people delivering every day. I'd like to think that I've been able to grow as a CEO into the role, and as the company's grown, I've been able to adapt and grow and be the right CEO for it as its needs have changed. And I think a lot of that, a meaningful part of that has come from the work you and I have done together, because it's enabled me to keep doing all of that, keep on that personal growth journey in a sustainable way for me. And I would say that my work-life balance is definitely not, perfect. And there are definitely challenges and stresses. I think my ability, as I said, my ability to kind of navigate those and be as effective as I can be through them is better. I've been better at doing that as a result of the work you and I have done together, and the strategies and the exercises and the techniques and the framing of stuff has just really helped me to continue to grow and navigate as that kind of career path has gone on.
Okay. How did this process change the way you approach challenges, both in your company and personal life? And how have you experienced that already?
I'd like to think I was always quite calm and thoughtful. So I tend, when there are challenges or things to deal with, I tend not to be highly emotional or to get really, I tend to be quite calm and thoughtful and methodical in how I deal with stuff. But I think what the work you and I have done together is that while I'm dealing with a big challenge, I'm able to do it with less personal cost, if that makes sense. So it still takes a lot out of you, and you still have to invest a lot of your own emotion and energy and focus in fixing problems or leading a team. But I've got better at doing that without it completely wiping myself out, or making sure I've still got energy and reserves or strategies and coping mechanisms behind, so that I'm still able to. It's less expensive for me personally to deal with those things than it would have been in the past.
Wow, amazing. I would like to talk about our connection and your ability to trust the process, this work, yourself, me. And my first question is, what was it about me or the way that I work or that we work together that made you feel supported and understood? And is there anything specifically you liked or enjoyed that you didn't experience before, like something that stood out to you?
So, like I said, when we first met, I just always felt it just felt very honest and open and trusting from the start. So I felt that you personally cared about my success or trying to make these sessions really effective for me. And that felt great. It didn't feel like just another client. It felt very, very personal, very connected. And then you're always available to support me if I needed to change sessions and stuff. You're always very flexible on that. But I appreciated the ability to message you on WhatsApp when. So I don't think we did it a huge amount, but there was a few moments over the time we worked together when there was like an SOS moment or something particularly challenging or several things came together at once. And I was always really grateful how you'd respond really promptly. And sometimes I was in different time zones and you would obviously get to it, when you could, and you'd send me some messages or some exercise to do. And it's just, they would help. And also just knowing there was someone in my corner who was trying to help, just knowing you were doing that was a big, felt really good. And so I think there was that kind of responsiveness, that personal connection, that care, and there was never any reason for me to not to trust that everything we did was confidential and being done with really good intentions.
Thank you for sharing. Let's move on to another section. For potential clients, people that might be seeing this video, if you had to sum up the entire experience in a few words, what would you say?
Trusting, caring, supportive, personal growth journey, emotional at times. You kind of end up inevitably you're dealing with work challenges and as a very ambitious person who's pushing really hard to be the best I can be and to lead a really high performing company. That brings a lot of challenges and that can result in quite a lot of emotions coming out sometimes, which I always valued how you handled them and engage with me on that sort of stuff. I was going to say fun, like it's fun, not in the sense that some of the sessions are kind of hard. You're dealing with complex emotions and complex challenges, but it's fun in the sense that it was trusting, it felt safe, felt positive, it felt like we were improving and making progress all the time. And that's kind of one of the joys of life and of a career, right? You're always developing and learning, and so this was a really fun, engaging strand of that career path. Less sort of technical business stuff, but very much about, I believe, how to be a better, more effective leader. And if I'm a better, more effective leader, I've got a better chance of leading a higher performing, more effective business.
Thank you. Would you recommend this work to others in your position, and why?
Yeah, I definitely would. And I'm really conscious that some people might feel uncomfortable sharing talking about their emotions or about their personal challenges, because a lot of the time that can be something we hold really close to ourselves, and it could just be daunting to share that with people. And possibly I'm more comfortable sharing that than other people, or it's something I've always been more relaxed about. But I think anyone in a kind of senior role is dealing with pressures and stresses. And the pressures and stresses from work can reflect back on your family life and vice versa. And I'm determined to do my best to maintain a really successful, ambitious career and try and forge the best home life and family life and personal environment I can. And that's hard, and it's hard to keep all balanced. And I think the work we've done together, again, while nothing's perfect, it's given me I've been able to achieve something approaching that balance much more effectively than I would have done. And so I think anybody else who's doing a senior job which involves pressure and stress and long nights or travel or whatever else, if you want to try and get close to that balance, you can't just keep doing what you're doing. You need to do something different. And I found working with you was a real help over a period of time.
How would you describe the type of person or leader who would benefit most from this kind of work?
Well, on the one hand, I would say that anyone who's got a high pressure job and they're ambitious and they want to be the best they can be at that job and they want to be happy and healthy and good in themselves as well can benefit from it. If I'm to be candid, I think people that you have to have enough self-confidence or enough trust in you to be able to really engage with the process and share kind of openly and completely how you're feeling with stuff. And sometimes that can be embarrassing because you're sharing your inadequacies or the stuff you're anxious about or that you feel less confident about rather than the projecting the kind of your best self or the stuff you're most confident or proud of. But I think that if you're able to do that in a kind of trusted one-to-one environment, which is what you create, in my belief, that's how you get the most out of the process. But you have to have enough confidence, or you have to have enough buy-in to it to be willing to expose yourself a little bit in the conversations, expose some of those anxieties.
If you could guess another CEO's, executives, or leaders' objections in working with me, what would you think those are, and what would you tell them to encourage them to do it anyways?
What would people say? They'd say I'm too busy. They'd say I've already got a coach. They would say I don't feel comfortable sharing that kind of stuff. And I'd say that if you're too busy, I think we're all busy all the time. You have an ability to control your calendar, and you can always choose something else not to do. And you and I spoke roughly every 2 weeks. I was able to make that time. So that meant I had to decide some other stuff not to do in those periods of time. But actually, I think it was a worthwhile trade-off because it made me more effective in the other, every other hour of those 2 weeks in between our sessions. I was more effective for having invested that time with you every fortnight. People that say they've already got a coach or they've already got advice and advisors, that's definitely true. But the work you and I do is nothing really to do with how to run a company. We weren't objectively talking about kind of a business challenge and how you solve that in a business way. We were talking about how I look after myself and am able to show up at work being the best version of myself I could be. So actually, it's very distinct from business coaching or business mentoring or having a kind of a trusted partner you talk to about business strategy. This was all about how you look after yourself and are able to turn up with your full energy. I think some people maybe don't feel comfortable talking about their emotions or their personal worries and anxieties. I would just encourage people to give it a go. I think I'm quite open to that stuff. I benefit from being able to share about it and talk about it with people. Some people just aren't ready to do that, and that's where they need to. That's really going to be a personal decision for them. I'd always encourage them to try it and just think of it as an experience, as opposed think of it as an experience to maybe learn from. And you might like it, you might not.
Thank you. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything else you would like to say?
Thank you. I've really enjoyed working together. I think it's really helped me. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. I've learned a huge amount from working with you about you and the work we do, but also about myself. And I hope and believe it's made me better at my job, which if I'm better at my job, that means hopefully the business does better and the people working in the company get a better experience and better career and better prospects too. So I think a lot of factors have played into the success of the company so far, but you've definitely helped me be better at my job. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rory. I appreciate working with you.
Cheers.
Okay.